Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I'm your host, Alacius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody today? How are you, Lacey?
I'm excellent. You know what? I can't wait to talk about the news. Those crazy Republicans.
Those
they're
crazy,
always up to
crazy
something.
Republicans. Well, before we get into that, I wanted to show you this. So, there's an economist named Joseph Stiglitz. He's a Nobel Prize-winning economist. And yeah, so he had this whole thing about the Fed, and he kind of criticized what they were doing with raising rates. And I wanted to watch this real quick. It's a few minutes, but he makes some just astoundingly good points. So we're gonna watch that real quick. Oops. So Joseph Stiglitz.
I'm pretty excited about this because we've talked a lot about the Fed and what they're up to. So I can't wait to see what somebody who's got such a high level of expertise has to say.
Yeah, so we'll watch him kind of go over what the issue is.
Thought the source of the inflation that began in the post-pandemic era was excess demand. And you could understand why they may have thought that if they didn't do their homework. I mean, it's really bad economics because they saw that the government had passed this enormous recovery program. And if all that money had been spent, it would have been inflationary. But you have to remember back just a few years ago, there was an enormous amount of uncertainty. And because of that uncertainty, firms weren't investing and consumers were saving. And you can see the data on savings accounts piling up. And when you put it all together and you look what actually happened to demand, total demand, we call aggregate demand, it was below trend. It was below what it had been forecast before the pandemic happened. Why was there inflation?
So he makes a really phenomenal point there, which is the Fed. Hang on. Why is this going so slow today? Okay. So the Fed, when they initially started the rate hikes, part of it was because there was this attitude that, okay, we gave all this money to people during the pandemic, right? And they're spending it. And he's like, okay, well, if that were true, that would be inflationary, right? That would be part of what's causing inflation, right? It'd be a significant part. People weren't doing that. People were more saving money. And the fact of the matter is demand, even now, well, this is a little bit older, but even now is still lower than it was pre-pandemic. So demand is not driving up inflation. There's not like an increased demand for products, right? Otherwise, we would have had really high inflation prior to the pandemic. So he's saying you can't really use that. That's a bad metric to use. Something else happened here. And it's not demand. And then he talks about what the Fed's decision was and why it's a bad idea. But yeah, that's a really good point. So it's not that people are buying a ton of shit. That's not what's driving it.
I love zooming in on that because I feel as though, we're kind of sometimes being led to believe that has something to do with it. But he's saying it really doesn't.
Yeah, but if you watch...
Because people did started, saving a ton of money during the pandemic, but I feel like in many ways we're sometimes being led to believe that now that we've emerged for it,
right.
The people are spending. I mean, they're spending more than they did then, but it sounds as though overall it's really still down compared to before it.
Right. But that's been the conservative talking point, which is the problem is that we gave out this big social welfare check to everybody during the pandemic so they wouldn't, so they could stay home and they wouldn't die of starvation, right? Which a lot of countries did. And that's what drove up inflation is we gave them all this money and then they went out and spent it and it drove up demand. That's the conservative argument. He's saying, well, wait a minute, it didn't really drive up demand. So your argument already falls apart right there. Right? Because if that were true, inflation would have been 11, 12% prior to the pandemic when there was a higher demand and more spending. So, I mean, it kind of just shoots it right out of the water.
We all know the reason. Car prices in the beginning went way up. Why? Was it because we didn't know how to make cars? No, we knew how to make cars. American auto companies forgot to put in orders for chips. And for want of a chip, you can't make a car.
So, Joe, just let me get this right. You're basically saying that there's economic incompetence at the Federal Reserve, the most important central bank on the planet. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I would say, I would put it a little softer than that. What I would say is they were in a difficult job of diagnosis. There were some complications. Let me explain. There were some areas, sectors, places where there was a shortage from excess demand. And even in the case of cars, you could have said, well, if nobody demanded cars, we wouldn't have car inflation. But of course, if you wanted to kill the demand for cars, you'd have to kill income. And that's not a solution.
So that is it right there. And he just kind of nailed the whole point down, which is, okay, so like that was a big factor into this, was the price of cars was one of the first things that really shot up, right? And part of that is because the car companies in the US didn't have chips and they needed money, and so they started shooting up the price in order to cover up their mistakes. And then they realized they could sort of get away with it and it wasn't negatively affecting demand. And then other companies picked up on that and started raising their prices dramatically and realized coming out of the pandemic, it didn't really affect demand. It was pretty inelastic, right? People were still going and buying, even though the inflation was ridiculous. So the companies started just pushing this and pushing this and pushing this because they're trying to maximize their profits. So that's what drove inflation, right? So I mean, you could sit there and say it was greed or the price gouging, and it was. But the bottom line is, if you can get away with it, you kind of will. Which is that's just how capitalism works. If you can get away with it, it's a good move.
Oh God, I hate putting it that way. I mean, I guess that's true, but I don't love the energy behind that.
No, but that's kind of the flaw of the system. Right.
Right. It's kind of the, I guess, ugly side of it, like
right.
if you can get away with it, do like,
yeah, it's
not always a good thing. It's,
yeah. I don't know if you ever read the book Dune or saw they're not really in the movies, but the, Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune, there's a great saying in there where they keep talking about every civilization carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. Because there's no perfect system. There's always going to be some huge flaw. And that's the huge flaw with capitalism, is that if you can get away with it, it's smart. It's a good thing.
Right. When some of the things you can get away with, maybe they're smart, but maybe they're screwing over a bunch of people, and that's not good,
Well, that's the point, is that you're exploiting labor to make more money. So the less I pay my workers, the more I get to pocket. Right? And so if I can get away with that, then I'm a smart capitalist. It's not good for my workers. It's not good for society.
It also makes you a something else too.
Right. That's my point. There's a difference between, like being a good capitalist or there's a big difference between legal and right sometimes. Right.
Right. What is legal
mm-hmm.
and what is morally right?
Right. Or ethically correct. Yeah.
There's a Venn diagram there, and hope most of the things are in that overlap section, but there are outliers. So
but they ask different questions too. So yeah,
right.
But here's an article with him. Let me show you this. So he so 3 reasons why further Fed rate hikes might make inflation worse. So basically, he's just going through that the Fed basically failed to address the issue. They misdiagnosed it, right? So he said, the real worry in my mind is they will increase interest rates too high, too fast, too far. right? And that's essentially what they did. And he, in his book, The Price of Inequality, Globalization and Its Discontents, which are both good books. While they were, what was it? Said that while there did need to be an adjustment from the zero to near zero interest rate policy that has prevailed since 2008 after the housing crash, there were three reasons an aggressive Fed course could stoke inflation. The first is that the overwhelming source of inflation is supply side disruptions leading to higher prices in oil and food, even causing shortage.
We have talked about that so much. Like, gotta look at that side of it. Sorry, I know I'm being disruptive, but
right. No, but he's not wrong.
Right, of course.
No, I mean, there was a supply side disruption. That's what initially started. And then
Right.
what businesses realized is, well, we have to rack up our prices. And then when they did it, they realized it didn't really affect their demand. So they just kept racking up prices. So he asked this.
But the problem is, like, is it real demand, or is it just because there was pent up demand because people couldn't get certain things, their regular things, because there was this shortage for a long time? Like, is it really that there's so much demand?
Right. Well,
or because the supply had been withheld. Do you understand what I'm saying?
The confusion is that demand itself plummeted during the pandemic because we were all pretty much locked in our homes for a year or year plus, right? People weren't going out or spending, right? That's his big point. And then what happened was when it kind of started to ease up. All right, it's still a pandemic. I don't know if it's a pandemic, but it's at least an endemic problem. But the thing is people started going out. Well, demand was up. People wanted to go out. So it didn't really, things that would negatively affect demand, like raising the prices extremely high, didn't. Probably because of the general attitude of people coming out of the pandemic was, well, I know it's more expensive now, but, I don't want to go sit at my house anymore. Right? So, I mean, there is some of that. But he asked this question here: will raising interest rates lead to more oil, lower prices of oil, more food, lower prices of food? The answer is clearly not. In fact, the real risk is that it will make it worse. And he says, because what we need to do is make investments to relieve some of the supply side bottlenecks that are causing such havoc on our economy. It's going to make it more difficult. So he's saying the supply side issue that drove this is what needs to be addressed. And the supply side issue that drove this is basically a failure of capitalism. Because if we're shipping goods, we don't want to have a whole fleet of trucks and guys sitting around that we're paying for. So we tend to, like the trucking industry is a great example of this. So we tend to pay these people on contract or by the hour. Or we don't own the truck, so we don't have to deal with the cost of the truck, right? The truck driver owns the truck. So we're only paying them for certain things. Well, so what happens when there's a pandemic and we're not selling much is we just cancel all those contracts. Essentially stop paying everybody. Right? Well, then what happens when it restarts? Well, it's harder to get all those people back now because we got to rehire and do new contracts. Right? And shipping was the same similar kind of situation where, it just sort of shut down because there's no profit in keep maintaining these systems when we're not making any money, when there's no demand, right? So they basically kind of shut down the whole supply side for the pandemic because why would we do that? We're just bleeding cash as a company. And then when it comes back, oh, great, now we got to rebuild it all from scratch, which takes a lot of time and a lot of money.
Right.
And so,
wait, that's not instantaneous?
No.
I mean, I do have a magic wand in the back room, but I don't think it works that way. I don't just
Right, but he says we need to make some investments to relieve some of the supply side bottlenecks. What he's basically saying is we need to make it a nonprofit or a government sort of program where the government pays these people. Because it's like that's what the government's for. And I know like a lot of idiots will say government should be run like a business. And it's like, you're a moron. When's the last time the Navy turned a profit?
I mean,
They
I
don't.
feel like that's not.
Right, that's my point.
That's not what they do.
Right.
That's not the point.
Right. That's not the point. That's not how government's supposed to work. And the bottom line is with the government, it's different. Like if military and police and firefighters and trash and the post office and all that stuff that the government runs, if that's the service and we're paying for it with taxes, right? Why don't we get a chance to refuse it? We don't. Taxes are mandatory. So the way the government raises money, they can force upon us. The only way that goes wrong is if they, if it gets to the point where it's ridiculous and we all start rebelling.
Right.
Right. But it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't work like a business at all. When you're the one printing the money, you're on the opposite side of that spectrum. You're the bank in Monopoly. You can never go bankrupt. Right? Right.
It's true.
So his worry is that, okay, so you raise interest rates, it gets reflected in rents, and there's a Federal Reserve study showing that, right? So we're raising the rates, rents are going up, cost of stuff is going up, housing prices are ridiculous. So he just kind of goes through this on where he talks about, okay, here's a great one. One indicator that they're not really capturing is what's going on with real wages, which normally go up when labor markets are tight, which they are now, right? Real wages refer to, wages adjusted for inflation, right? Labor markets are tight right now, which means there's more jobs than employees, right? Prices of goods are going up because of inflation. We all know that, right? So that should mean you should compensate workers even more. But that's not happening. Why? Because as a good capitalist, why would I do that if I don't have to? It cuts into my profits. That's why all the workers out there striking now. How many strikes have we had just in the last year? How many labor movements have we had in the last year where they're asking for more money? You even have the president of the United States going out to a strike.
Right. How many near strikes? How many strike threats?
Right. When have you ever even heard of a president? Maybe your local House representative for the state or something, but the president? No. So he makes a good point. And like he said at the end of his video, the real problem is that what the Fed is trying to do is lower wages, which are already too low. These people should be getting paid more. It's not balanced in the economy. And so what happens is now you get too many people at the top with too much money and too many people at the bottom with not enough, right? And it's not going to help inflation because these people are going to be desperate for whatever they have.
Right.
You're not really solving the problem. You're just dumping it on the working class. And saying, just shut up and do your job for really low pay, even though you'll never afford a house or be able to get married or to really have kids or do much of anything. And like, if you guys really want to blow your mind, look at because I love it when boomers do this. Well, when I started working, I was only making $3 an hour. And it's like, yeah, you know what that is today? I mean,
yeah, you're $3 an hour. You could also buy an entire house for $10,000. It's like
right, $3.25 an hour. Let's do that. That's over 40 years, right? That's $13.90 today if you factor in inflation. If you factor in cost of living, it's closer to $25. That's why when they say $15 an hour, $25 an hour, they're not pulling those numbers out of their ass. I mean, they're measurements.
Right, of course.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting. I thought that was because he's basically in a much more intellectual way kind of hammered home the point that we've been making. And he did it very simply. I think he did a great job. So
before we move on,
Yeah.
this is only sort of sideways related, but I have to put my plug in for something I love.
What's that?
So, Alexius has recommendations for you all. So, those of you who like to travel, in Stockholm, Sweden, there is this very cool museum that sounds like it would be super boring. It's the Nobel Museum.
Oh yeah.
And it's a whole really cool museum about the Nobel Prize and the varying winners and how they work. And it is really just cool. And tidbit of info, only one of them is in Norway and all the rest of them are in Sweden.
Huh.
Oddly enough, there is one, you can correct me if somehow I've gotten this mixed up, but it's the Nobel Peace Prize, comes, I believe, out of Sweden, or out of Norway, and all the other ones come out of Sweden, I believe. There's only one. One comes out of Norway, got assigned to Norway, and everything else is Sweden.
Yeah.
But there's this fabulous museum, and I was on the fence about going to it because I was like, is that going to be super boring? But no, it's very cool. So if you're in Stockholm, don't skip that.
All right.
Don't
check
check
it out. Yeah, it sounds interesting.
It was super interesting. They did a great job.
Well, cool. All
right, we can move on now that I've told everyone where they need to go when they're in Sweden.
All right, nice.
Also, check out the ABBA Museum. I'm just saying, you need to dance with those damn holograms.
There you go.
Worth it.
All right. Well, since we're moving on to fun things.
Here we go.
This one's for you. So Vivek Ramaswamy is still running for president, in case you didn't know. So is Ron DeSantis. Not that you hear much about it with all Trump stuff.
When the people are doing this, sometimes I wonder, is it because you think you can win, or are you just trying to screw up the vote?
No, I think for Vivek, it's not about winning. It's about getting the attention. I think DeSantis.
Is this some weird Ross Perot thing?
Yeah. Well, I think pretty much. I think DeSantis and Nikki Haley are hoping Trump has to drop out because right now Trump might not be able to run.
Okay, it is a valid move if you think you could get into that number 2 position. Normally you're not really aiming for a number 2 position in life, right. But in this weird situation, the number 2 position could actually get you the front runner spot.
Right, because the number 1 might not even be eligible. Anyway, so Vivek, who his whole thing's tanking, but here's David Pakman, who we use a lot. We love David Pakman. Anyway, here's a New Hampshire woman, and she has a question for Vivek, and it goes really bad for Vivek. This is really funny.
I sometimes think you do some of these things just for me.
Yeah, well, she answers your question about why do they run if they know they're not going to win.
You know what? You know what? Me and this girl, I gotta say, I don't know what this woman has to say exactly, but it is a fun thing to ponder.
Yeah. Well, she already answered. She'll answer it for you.
A video.
Oh, good.
Of a woman at Vivek Ramaswamy's New Hampshire town hall effectively ending his presidential campaign. I don't know that I have ever seen such a concise, brutal, and pointed takedown of everything that a candidate stands for in 90 seconds. Listen to this.
What's this?
Incredible video.
Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. You've expressed some illogical and dangerous positions just about everything under the sun, but I will only bring up a few points today.
Okay. Be respectful of everyone, but we'll pick your favorite ones. Thank you.
Just a few years ago, we all saw firsthand the disastrous results when a ruthless capitalist, a scam artist, a showman, and a liar with no public service experience became the president of the United States.
We did.
And yet we are here again. My fellow New Hampshire residents are being manipulated by showmen and Trump wannabes to win our votes.
Oh my God.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you may be a millionaire.
Okay, just pause right there. Just pause right there.
She called him a Trump wannabe.
Okay, that's first of all some really funny and like you go girl kind of shit right there.
It's true.
2 thumbs up from Olympias
Yes,
right
true.
there. I guess I only get to use 1 thumb. Are you going to give her the second thumb though?
2 thumbs. I'll give her 2. Yeah, I'll give her.
All right.
I'll go see that movie again.
But just pull the screen up again. Don't unpause. Just look at the way he's standing. Just like his cocky ass little like.
Yeah.
Look at that. Listen.
Oh no, he knows
I'm
he's getting.
Actor and director Duncan and I have mentioned these things here before. We have extensive theatrical training, both of us, and like that body language there really is speaking to you.
Oh,
like, you got to watch.
That is.
You gotta watch these guys. I mean, politicians are kind of like trained in keeping a certain poise or whatever, but this guy, he's less trained, but you kind of got to watch the way these guys stand and move and the way, they are physically when they address you, because that's sending a message, and that message right there, that's like his body is a red flag right there. And I'm not body shaming him, like his position.
Oh yeah, this is scorn. This is major scorn. He hates her at this moment. She just goes, especially she just called him a Trump wannabe, which is what he is. But anyway.
I mean, that's not wrong.
Nope, she's 100%
right. Companies in Bermuda. Let's talk about your lack of job qualifications.
Yeah.
You're not qualified.
Wait, you missed that. She said, let's talk about your lack of job qualifications.
All right, let's do that.
You're not qualified to become the principal of my children's school of only 1,000 students. You're not qualified to be the select board of my town with a population of 16,000 people.
Wow.
And you're definitely not qualified to run for the highest office of our nation to govern 330 million Americans. Spewing nonsensical, fast-talking, empty words interspersed with name-dropping Thomas Jefferson and George Washington should not be misconstrued as knowledgeable. We Americans should stop thinking that rich men who fund their campaigns and manipulate us into thinking that they're smart or savvy are qualified for the presidency, to receive the codes to launch nuclear weapons, and to become the commander-in-chief of our military forces.
Wow.
Yes, it's coming. Mr. Ramaswamy, if we American voters, thank you, it's coming.
We'll let her finish. We'll give her a chance to finish.
Thank you. Mr.
Answer the question
Ramaswamy,
mark, then.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, you will. If we American voters keep supporting self-promoting showmen who treat the U.S. presidency or vice presidency as an entry-level position, then we, the American people, are to blame for the destruction of our democratic institutions. Please, your thoughts, Bob.
Thank you.
That's it.
She just spanked everybody on that stage and in the audience.
Well, everybody's supporting him, yeah. He's a con man. He's a con man. He's just there selling snake
not
oil.
Everyone supporting him, but everyone also supporting Trump and kind of a slew of other people. She kind of used him as her, token example. Mm-hmm. But she just like smacked half of that stage. She smacked half of that audience, and a whole lot of people in America. Go her.
Yeah. Guy's never worked in politics, has no background, doesn't really understand a lot of it. She's right. He's not qualified. He's not qualified to be, like she said, the chairman in her town of 16,000 people.
Right.
Oh, God. Well, anyway, he was tanking in the polls before that. He has not gone up since his so-called meteoric rise that everybody was jealous of. He was talking about forever. Yeah, that's ended. It's over. I mean, he's done. You can stick a fork in him. He's done. But yeah.
I mean, shit, people should vote for her.
Well, I mean, but she pretty much just succinctly said, you're a piece of shit. You're just trying to con the American people so you can make money. Yeah.
Well,
that's right.
But the last guy did, the last Republican anyway.
That's what almost all of them have done for the last 20, 30 years. Let's see. So, okay, fun shit. So Donald Trump, speaking of, because Trump's wannabe, we just watched. So Trump, in New York, in that case, not the federal case, the case in New York about his businesses, right, and the fraud. So there was testimony from his former CFO and somebody else in the organization and from the accountant so far the last couple of weeks. And they've all said, yeah, we inflated the prices. Yes, Trump told us to inflate the prices. Yes, he told us to devalue them when we paid the taxes. Basically, they all said, yeah, he knew and committed all the fraud. So I don't know how you come back from that. You don't. Unless all these people are lying.
Yeah.
And the only people that have the reason to lie are Trump's CFO. And he did try to do I don't remember, I don't forget. And then, of course, the DA pointed out, well, wait a minute, you got a $2 million severance package that's paid in installments. What was the total fines and stuff from the court? $2 million. That's kind of a coincidence. You got a $2 million severance package after you got your fines from the court. And if you don't cooperate, then they're not going to pay you your severance package. Isn't that correct? Yeah. But you don't remember now. I mean, you see how bad that looks in court? A little bit of a Perry Mason moment for Donald Trump. But anyway, so that judge gave him a gag order because he kind of semi-threatened his clerk, right? Now, in the Washington, D.C. case for the January 6th stuff, right, the insurrection stuff, Judge Tanya Chutkan also gave him a gag order. So he's got 2 gag orders in 2 different courts, and this is the second one.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. This is a former president.
Well, you know what? I wanted him to shut the hell up all during that time.
He's not going to shut up at all.
Former President Trump
No.
now under a partial gag order in the federal election interference case.
Now, that order bars Trump from attacking witnesses, prosecutors, and court staff involved in special counsel Jack Smith's federal prosecution into Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election. The judge saying the former president's free speech rights don't give him the right to, quote, launch a pre-trial smear campaign. Hours after the ruling, Trump spoke to supporters in Iowa.
The judge doesn't like me too much. You know the gag orders? You can't speak badly about your opponent. But this is weaponry all being done because Joe Biden is losing the election and losing very, very badly to all of us in the polls. He's losing badly.
The judge did not specify how she plans to enforce her order. She says she'll assess any consequences for the former president if and when he violates that order.
Which he kind of just did.
Violates that order.
Like, hang on. Like a couple hours after she gives that order, he's on TV talking shit about her. But we just saw part of it. Which could put her in danger because his supporters have attacked people before. We know that.
You know what the question is? Kudos to her for putting the gag order in the first place. But
she had to, yeah.
I'm gonna throw this challenge out there. Like, are y'all going to have the guts to actually enforce any of it?
Yeah, she'll probably put fines and stuff at first. I know they don't really want to put him in jail because they know that's going to cause a big storm with his followers are going to say, oh, he's a political prisoner, he's falsely imprisoned, blah, 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 bullshit. You know, I, on the other hand, if I were the judge, I'd be like, as soon as he did that shit, I'd be like, no, put out a warrant for his arrest for violating the gag order. He can sit in jail until the court date.
Right.
You know, and if he needs to be transferred somewhere else for his court date, we'll transfer him.
Right.
But he's going to be transferred in shackles. He's not going to be transferred. You know, he's going to be transferred in secured vehicles, not in,
not a limousine.
And how would you like to be the Secret Service agent who has to sit with him in jail?
Oh, God.
Because they're going to have guys on shifts doing that fucking job. Because he's still entitled to it unless he waives it. Which he won't. Anyway, so here is So that speech in Iowa, he gave a couple speeches in Iowa. This has been my solace with the Midas touch. I wanted to look at this because he is gone mentally. He looks like he's intoxicated through most of this. It's really, he is just out there. This is just weird. Let me unmute this.
Starved Hamas, and we took Hamas and Hezbollah and all of the rest. I don't think we've ever seen where they kill babies. Just like I said years ago, we're going to turn Christmas around. Remember, the department stores they refused to use the word Christmas. They'd have red, they'd have everything. I said, where's Christmas? Wonderful people one day. I didn't know you had flies in Iowa. I hate flies.
That was Donald Trump speaking in Iowa
What
on Monday.
the hell is that?
I know.
Wait, that was not spliced together to be funny, right?
No. I don't even think that was all spliced. I mean, there were little splices there, but I mean, that was one speech in Iowa. He did two of them that were just like that. He did another one just like that. I mean, he's just off the fucking rails. So Ben's covering this, but we'll look at some more.
That literally doesn't even make any sense.
No, he's talking about Hamas, but he's pronouncing it hummus. Then he's talking about Christmas, and he can barely say the word Christmas. I think with the stress of the trials and everything, I also think he's probably just doing a shit ton of Adderall or Sudafed or whatever it is he does, whatever speed drug he takes. I mean, he seemed like he was gone, like he was drunk or something. It was weird. But let's see. Here's another clip.
That's not what Judge gave a gag order today. Did you hear that on speech? Which I believe is totally unconstitutional what she did. A judge gave a gag order. A judge doesn't like me too much. Her whole life is not liking me. But she gave a gag order. You know what a gag order is? You can't speak badly about your opponent. But this is weaponry all being done because Joe Biden is losing the election and losing very, very badly to all of us.
Yeah, in fact, Special Counsel Jack Smith's team expressly stated that nothing in the gag order precludes him from engaging in any legitimate campaign activity, engaging in any attacks on President Biden. President Biden has nothing.
Yeah, so, which is true. He can still talk shit about Biden. He just can't talk shit about the case or the judge or the jurors or anybody else. But he's just slurring his words. He's red as he's so red it's coming through his orange makeup, his orange tanner. I mean, one more. Let's do one more clip, but this is just insane.
And states that includes lots of people in the Biden administration. Here, play this clip.
If you support Hamas or any ideology that's having to do with that, or any of the other really sick thoughts that go through people's minds, very dangerous thoughts, you're disqualified if you're a communist, a Marxist, or a fascist.
What is he talking about?
Other than the people that are already here, of which many are in the Biden administration, you're disqualified. I'd like to get them out too. Maybe we'll work on that next.
So we say if you're a Marxist or a communist, we're going to get rid of you somehow. Yeah, that's real fucking democratic. I don't agree with your politics, so I'm going to put you in prison or deport you. Right? Yeah. There's nothing fascist about that at all. I mean, he's just fucking gone. He is like Pluto, man. He is fucking out there. So, I don't know what you think, but they're talking about, the Republicans are talking about how old Biden is, and I'm like, yeah, but Biden can sort of speak, and Biden rides his bike and does push-ups, and I mean, yeah, he's old and he's got old man tendencies, and right, but Trump's only 3 years younger, and Trump sounds like he's starting to go from dementia really bad or Parkinson's or something. He's lisping and slurring his speech, and it's just, yeah, he's red as a fucking apple.
I don't even want to guess what it is. I mean, like,
it could be drugs.
It's all just like something drugs, something medical, something. I don't know. All I know is like he kind of wasn't really making that much sense during part of it. Not even just like his normal, like he's clearly making crap up thing,
right.
But like literally not making sense. Like you're trying to listen to all the words together in sentence form and assign meaning to them, whether you agree or not. And assigning meaning is a problem.
Yeah. It's just it's just weird. Anyway, so he's extra gag order, and now he's going off just spouting crap. His audience are getting smaller and smaller. I don't know. I don't think he has much of a shot, but you never know. Polls show he's still looking good right now. But let's go to some more Republican nonsense here. So, the speakership of the House. We have not had a speaker in the House since October 3rd. And it is now, what is today? October 18th.
18.
So over 2 weeks now. Why is this important? The Speaker of the House is second in line to the presidency. If the president dies and the vice president dies, the Speaker of the House becomes president. So the third most powerful seat in our government in the United States, easily, arguably, the third most powerful seat in the world, totally unoccupied for 2 weeks because the Republicans can't get their shit together. So here's a quick recap. Kevin McCarthy became a speaker. It took 15 votes to make him speaker. First time that ever happened. He had to give up a lot of concessions to the Republicans. One of them was that any one Republican at any time could call for basically a vote to vacate the chair. And then if they got a vote, he'd be no longer speaker. Sure enough, less than a year later, he pisses one of them off, Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz does that. He gets vacated from the seat, so he loses it in less than a year. Forced out of his seat, right? Since then, no speaker. Republicans get together, they elect Steve Scalise to run as speaker. Steve Scalise realizes he's not going to get the votes. Instead of being embarrassed, he withdraws.
Well, okay. Let's also, I don't know if this is his thinking, but I'm just thinking, if I were somehow in this whole disaster, like, do I want to be the person inheriting the disaster? It's a really powerful position and all of that stuff, and I'm sure it's going to look great on a resume, but like...
He wanted it. He ran...
You're literally taking on a huge disaster. I mean...
No, he wanted it. He wanted it. He ran for it. But I think he realized he wasn't going to get the vote, so it wasn't worth it. So Jim Jordan...
I'd drop it for another reason, man.
So Jim Jordan, the guy Trump wanted, was now up for it, right? So Jim Jordan, first vote. Here's the breaking news after the first vote for Jim Jordan. Now we got rid of Kevin McCarthy. Scalise was their next pick. Now we're down to the third string, Jim Jordan. Let's see how Jim Jordan did on his vote to become Speaker of the House.
How many rounds do you think this speaker vote's going to take? We need to get watch yourself. We need to get a speaker as soon as possible and get to work for the Americans. Any concerns you've heard from members about tactics used to win your vote? No. Are you going back to the floor today? But that's the plan.
When do you think the next vote will be served?
Jordan had.
Okay, it's Kevin McCarthy. Sorry.
On the first round. I think the difference here too is we have rules so we can sit down and talk to the other members and be able to move through.
So that was the former speaker, Kevin McCarthy. So the first guy, Jim Jordan, loses. Right? You need a majority to win. So in the House, that's 217 votes to become speaker. You need that minimum vote out of the 400 and whatever it is, 432, right? Well, here's what's funny. Jim Jordan got 200 votes, which means 20 Republicans went against him. Right? Jim Jeffries, who's the Democrat, right? Jim Jeffries got all the Democratic votes. They united together, and Jim Jeffries got, or not, is it Jim? Not Jim Jeffries, sorry. Hakeem Jeffries, or whatever it is. He got 212 votes. So the Democrat in a Republican-controlled House got more votes for Speaker than the freaking Republican.
Like, what planet are we on right now?
So here's the deal. You only need 217 to win. Hakeem Jeffries got 212. Now, 5 Republicans would have to basically betray the party and vote for Hakeem, which is not likely to happen. But that's how close he is to being Speaker. And he'd be the first time that I know of, at least, that he would be the minority party would have a Speaker of the House, which would be it'd be crazy. Meanwhile, the Republicans held another vote today for Jim Jordan, right? And he got even less votes today. So things have
How many
gotten.
people today?
I don't know what the total was today. They just said less. He got less than 200, which is what he got yesterday.
Less than 200.
So he got 200 yesterday. He got less than that today.
Oh.
So he
Jeez,
lost.
okay.
So he lost more people. Probably because they have no confidence in him. So things got. I mean, so now it's just a big shit show. Anyway.
I mean, it happened, but yeah, the shit show continues.
Oh God! So now they're arguing about the guy who's the temporary chair or the temporary speaker. All he can do is call a vote for speaker. That's all he's permitted to do. But now they're talking about, well, maybe because the government shutdown's coming pretty soon, because all they did was kick it down the road for a month and a half. Maybe what we do, that and the whole thing in Israel, maybe what we do is we give him limited powers to hold those votes. And so that's the other thing they're talking about. But then you still wouldn't have a speaker. So it might be that we go all the way into the end of the year, maybe even next year's election cycle, with no Speaker of the House, which means we can't pass a budget. We can't pass any laws. We can't, I mean, basically, they shut it down. And it's like, what do you expect from a party who went from limited government to no government to destroy the government and then expect them to govern? I mean, that's kind of what's happened is they are their brand. But anyway, so here is, so Jim Jordan running for speaker. I wanted to pull this up. This is Face the Nation. So forget this woman's name. She's talking to GOP Representative Mike Turner about Jim Jordan being selected. And Jim Jordan has a lot of skeletons in his closet. And this is one of the big ones. So we're stealing this clip from the Majority Report with Sam Cedar, and we'll watch a couple clips from this where they talk about Jim Jordan and Jim Jordan's past, because he's, like I said before, he has some big skeletons in his closet. So they're going to talk. So this is them watching a clip of Face the Nation and Representative Mike Turner, who supports Jim Jordan for the speaker. And so we'll watch this real quick.
Another Ohio rep and the House Intelligence Committee chair.
Gotcha.
Jordan's working right now to put that coalition together to get to 217.
So do the allegations that he turned a blind eye to sexual assault at Ohio University cause any problems for you, or the allegations that he had knowledge of Donald Trump's attempts on January 6th and leading up to it to stop the election certification?
The allegations at Ohio State, there's not one person who's ever said that they have knowledge of Jim Jordan having it.
Pause it for a second.
And what occurred.
Now, to be fair, that is a true statement. There is not one person who said that. There are multiple people who have said it.
So the first issue there, so she brought up two big issues on Jim Jordan. One is he was kind of part of the January 6th thing. He wanted Mike Pence to overturn the election, right? And he's been subpoenaed for the January 6th hearings. He still never showed up for the subpoena, even though he's a House rep. He should have showed up for the subpoena, but he wouldn't do it.
Oh my God.
Which was funny because he was bitching about something on a committee where he's the chair of the committee, and nobody answers my subpoenas. And the Democrats were all laughing, going, why would they? You don't answer subpoenas, right?
Right? Again, this goes back to the thing that you were talking about. Like, you know, it seems as though this party keeps showing over and over again that there's one set of rules for one set of people and another set of rules for another set of people.
Right.
You know?
So here's the thing about the other big issue. So Jim Jordan, when he was a assistant wrestling coach at Ohio State University, for like 7 or 8 years he was there. There was a doctor there who had been there for like 20 years, and it was fairly well known this doctor was sexually assaulting the wrestlers. 18 to 20-year-old boys, right? And there are at least 6 or 7 people that went to Jim Jordan and reported it, and Jim Jordan helped cover it all up and let it go for years while he was there. And so that was the other question they asked him about. So when he's like, well, there's not one person that said, Sam was making the joke. It's not one person, it's several people who have accused him, credibly accused him. And this case is still going on. So let's watch this next clip they're going to watch. But this is just amazing to me that Republicans don't even, they'd want this guy to be the speaker with all this shit.
That video. So after we're done with this, we'll play it.
Well, first of all, the allegations at Ohio State, there's not one person who's ever said that they have knowledge of Jim Jordan having any knowledge. And what occurred at Ohio State wasn't even under Jim Jordan. He was not like the head coach. This was not something that he had responsibility for. So those that are making accusations are making just presumptions of, well, he would have had to have known. But there's no one, and mind you, this was years ago, no one who has come forward at all ever and never said that there was actual knowledge on Jim Jordan's part. And of course, he condemns what occurred there. With respect to Donald Trump, that's a mess that's going to continue going on the issue of January 6th, and Americans are going to be able to have that debate as we go forward in this next election cycle.
He really spent a lot of time on that thing, which is stunning, because there are, do we have it?
I wonder.
So anyway, that kills me because it's just such a chicken shit answer. You should know this by now. You're going to vote for the guy for speaker. You should know that there are credible people that actually spoke to him and told him about this, and he didn't do anything. There's credible evidence that he was involved with January 6th, that he knew that Trump was planning it beforehand. There's text messages, there's video. It's not like, it's not like you have to be, Matlock to fucking solve this one. Right?
I don't know. Maybe we need Matlock to bust in here on this one.
It's just a fucking shit show. Let me skip to the juicy shit here, because this is just amazing. So he's talking about no one's accused him. No one says he has any knowledge, right? That was his statement. Here is a very famous clip that came out not too long ago, and Sam's going to introduce it here. Let me unmute.
But work as an assistant wrestling coach in basically telling students coming up to him and saying, look, I can't do anything about the predator, essentially, that is looking to sexually assault you. You would think that she would have a follow-up, because that they're going to say, that's not true. And this is the video. And look at the chyron. It's not like somebody sitting there with their iPhone. This is in the Ohio channel, their video from the Ohio House, and here is testimony
Civil Justice Committee
about allowing victims to sue the University of Ohio.
This is disgusting. You people have the power to do something. Ohio State is too arrogant. They think it's going to go away. Jim Jordan called me crying, groveling on the 4th of July. begging me to go against my brother. Begging me. Crying for a half hour. That's the kind of cover-ups that's going on there. Now, you guys can sit and act like it's not going on, but I got a lot of other stuff here. Emails that were taken out of my mailbox. That's a crime.
So anyway, no, I mean that's it. I don't know what else you really need to hear about that. I mean, there's lots of other witnesses. There's a lot, like he said, he's got emails, they've got texts, he's got calls.
Do you need them? Do you need more witnesses? I mean, like, you can produce them, but yeah, do you need them?
Well, his brother was one of the guys who was sexually assaulted. That's why he's saying, no, go up there and tell. Jim Jordan called the guy and said, tell everybody that your brother lied about being sexually assaulted. And, you know, I could see his attitude. You saw the guy's, his attitude was probably, fuck you, you piece of shit.
No.
Yeah, but you know what's funny about that whole thing is, so the Democrats were talking about, what if Jim Jordan becomes Speaker of the House, right? Well, there were a lot of people in the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, right, who are sitting there going, wait a second, if Jim Jordan becomes the Speaker, we can run that video in ads on a loop all over the country. We'll pick up 30 seats in the House or 40 seats. Jim Jordan is such a fucking shit show. The Republicans are so corrupt and dirty. You show that to the average American who knows nothing about politics. Hey, the Speaker of the House that the Republicans elected covered up a sexual predator for the better part of a decade, and then cried and begged people to lie.
And I know this isn't popular to say, but also that sexual predator wasn't preying on women, preying on young men. And let's just, bank on the sexism in America, right? Wait a minute. Preying on men.
Right.
Preying on anybody is horrible, but yeah, quite frankly.
Yeah.
When it's going to breed even bigger, and I hate saying that, but it will.
Yeah, that's probably true. There's probably some truth to that. Anyway, but the whole history of Republicans as House Speaker has been just a shit show. And I wanted to kind of wrap up this news segment with this. This is Alex Wagner on her show on MSNBC. But just sort of the past of Republican speakers of the House. Because this is just, it's just a fucking nightmare with these guys. Oh. He said, a party that doesn't want to govern.
I do hope that I have left a few footprints behind that may be of value to those who come after me, just as I have benefited from the footprints of those who I followed to this most wonderful of institutions, the People's House.
Dennis Hastert, the man you saw just there, was this century's very first Republican Speaker of the House. He held the Speaker's gavel from 1999 to 2007. He got the job after the hasty departure of his predecessor, Newt Gingrich. That's because when Republicans lost 5 seats in the House during the 1998 elections, they turned on Gingrich. And his longtime ally, Congressman Bob Livingston, threatened to challenge Gingrich for the speakership. So Gingrich resigned and was ultimately replaced by Hastert. To this day, Dennis Hastert remains...
What she's also forgetting is Gingrich was having an affair, I think, at the time.
Longest serving leader of the Republican conference. And Hastert might have retired in the good graces of his party, except that several years after his resignation, Hastert was convicted of financial crimes related to child sex abuse. So, then there was John Boehner, who, as Speaker in 2015, faced the threat of a motion to vacate from Congressman Mark Meadows. That motion never came to a vote, but the effort alone led Boehner to resign in the middle of his term. He served for 4 years as Speaker. And then there was Paul Ryan. His time as Speaker coincided with Donald Trump's election and a new era of politics, and the Republican Party, for that matter. Ryan reportedly told friends that serving as Speaker during the Trump administration was, quote, agonizing. Trump went after Ryan with public insults, in addition to Trump's near daily controversies that Ryan had to govern through. About 30 months into the job, Paul Ryan opted to vacate the Speaker's chair and also to retire from public office entirely. And now, as of today, Kevin McCarthy, the party's fourth Speaker this century, served for 269 days before being ousted by members of his own party in an historic vote.
So the history of the Republican Party is they all either leave because they can't fucking stand it or they step down in shame.
Well, I don't know if I have anything to add to that other than wow. Just wow.
I have one more thing to add. Say what you want about Nancy Pelosi. And don't get me wrong, I disagree with Nancy Pelosi on a ton of things, and I definitely do not like her insider trading shit. Don't get me wrong. Not a huge Pelosi fan, right? But I will say this. One of the longest sitting speakers of the House in history, and she did keep the Democrats together. I can't remember who was speaker before her for the Democrats. She held that seat for a long fucking time under Obama. And under Bush, I think.
Yeah.
You know, she was speaker up until, just recently when she stepped down. Was it like a year or so ago? Yeah, it was a year ago when McCarthy first became speaker. Yeah, was when she had to step down. But yeah. So yeah, no, just a total shit show with the Republicans. I don't know what else to say at this point. It's just crime, corruption, and lack of ability to do anything. So, anything else you want to add, Lace?
No, I'm kind of left on, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that last little flip was the punctuation at the end of the sentence there.
Oh, yeah. That's why I saved it for last. Sometimes I do a good job of ordering this. I'm not always the best.
Occasionally.
You know, blind squirrel finds an acorn occasionally. Anyway, you better take a quick break. Ready to dive in? Yep.
Now that I have every beverage in the world again.
There you go. Here we go. All right. So you're going to love this one. So this guy, Patrick Bet-David, has a podcast. I think he's got 1.4 million subscribers, something like that. Anyway, this is like a short clip, like a TikTok kind of clip. Now, for those of you who've never seen this show, Lacey and I are both big proponents of education. We think it's a very important cornerstone of our society. So did the forefathers, right? They believed you should have an education so you could be a better voter because you'd be informed, right? Well, Patrick Bet-David's going to tell you why you shouldn't send your kids to college. And you're going to love this. Because it's the ultimate conservative straw man bullshit. It's so great. All right, here he is. Yelling at somebody, which is what he usually seems to be doing.
I'm going to go out there and persuade and manipulate your kids. I'm going to get your kids to believe in my philosophies and divide your kids against you, and you're not even going to know it. I'm going to be so smooth about it where all of a sudden it's too late. One of my guys that work for me, a C-suite executive, him and his daughter were like this. He spends $200,000 to send his daughter to this school in Chicago. I won't name it, but goes to the school. He says, every year my daughter came back, she hated me more. Second year more. Third year, all she would call me is, how could you be such a greedy capitalist to vote for such and such person? He says, after the fourth year, my daughter never came back home. She went straight to California. I lost my daughter. So let me get this straight. I spent $200,000, gave it to an institution that doesn't pay taxes on it, and has got a cash cow of an endowment they're sitting on so they can steal my daughter away from me. That doesn't mean it's permanent, but I may have lost my daughter with me for 10 years.
Okay, so that's just stupid. First off, $200,000 at a school has endowment. It's a private school. It's not a public school.
Right.
Not a public college.
Okay. Let's talk about human development for a moment.
Let's take a minute.
So, I'm not going to start you off at the beginning of human development because that's unnecessary to this. But let's fast forward. Let's see. First year of college. People that have family support in some way, etc., and aren't just automatically independent, frequently, when local enough, go home a lot. They are more still involved with their families. Second year, they become more involved in their own community, more independent, but probably still a fair amount of attachment to home. By the time you're done with college, you're 4 or 5, whichever it is for your situation.
Right. You'd agree.
You're usually pretty independent at that point.
Yeah.
And most people I know, unless their goal was they wanted to go back and serve their particular community they grew up in, go move somewhere related to whatever the field is or job they got or whatever. They don't go back to their parents' house. That's not even the thing. And college has always been something that has given young people the opportunity to formulate their own ideologies, which is almost always some sort of departure from their parents, even if they remain on the same side of the political fence.
Yeah.
It's usually a departure from their parents.
Well,
am I missing something here?
No. I think the other thing is he kind of gives away the game right at the beginning where he talks about, I'm going to manipulate your kids and be so smooth. And it's like, but that's what you're talking about. The guy's daughter goes and gets an education. She disagrees with him, right? I'm sorry. If your 22-year-old daughter disagrees with you and you can't suck it up as a 40 or 50-year-old man to try and maintain that relationship, I have a hard time blaming the 22-year-old whose brain isn't still fully developed. Because that doesn't happen until your mid-20s. No, if you're a 40 or 50-year-old man, it's your job to maintain that relationship. They're still young. They're still naive, right? I mean, I wasn't, I didn't feel like a full adult and in control of my life till I was almost 30. I'm just giving an example. But my point is that's the thing is he's a grown adult. She's a 22-year-old woman, right? She's still really young, right? The problem he has is, oh no, my daughter got an education and now she disagrees with me. So she doesn't want to deal with me anymore. Well, part of that is not that she disagrees with you. It's how you handle it. I have a friend. Right. He's an atheist. His son is a born-again Christian. His son has literally told him you're going to hell and all this shit. And yet he still has a good relationship with his son. I mean,
probably because he's not elected to alienate his son on the basis of that one particular belief. He's opted to find the things they can connect on and focus on those, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So basically what he's saying is this guy who works for me who sent his daughter to this school is an asshole. His daughter became aware of the fact that he's an asshole and then she doesn't want to deal with him anymore. Now, the implication is the university taught her to hate her father. Right? Well, wait a minute. We don't know what
I must have missed that class.
Yeah. No.
Did you put the hate my dad class?
No, I disagree with my dad on a lot of things, but I still get along with my father. Still talk to my father all the time. But my point is in fact, we're going golfing this weekend. Anyway, so the point is that it's just funny to me because the thing that he's missing is the college didn't do that. Right? The fact that she became an adult did that. And because she has her own thoughts and ideas. What he's suggesting about the manipulating of the kids is don't educate your kids so they never have their own thoughts and ideas. It's just your thoughts and ideas. Because that's all they ever have or are exposed to.
Keep all of yours.
Right. Just keep them in that bubble.
And never have any of their own. Right.
Because here's the thing. We don't know what his daughter's major was. She majored in business. She's not doing a lot of politics. She could be getting that from her friends, the people she socializes with, not necessarily the university. right? Plus, I can tell you this, as somebody who went to a public school and then did my grad school at private schools tend to be a lot more conservative. Just in general. Public schools tend to be a lot more liberal, but private schools tend to be a lot more conservative because they have to deal with their donors, and their donors tend to be people with a lot of money, or businesses with a lot of money, which tend to be a little bit more conservative. That's just kind of the way of the world, right? But that's my whole thing. I think it's hilarious because he's trying to imply that it was the college, that there's something nefarious going on at the college, when really it's your friend's probably just an asshole, and his daughter realized it, and now she doesn't want to be associated with it. Because for all we know, she was a freaking theater arts major and knows nothing about politics other than what her friends talk about or what she reads.
Right.
We don't know the university taught her anything about it. I mean...
Well, and quite frankly, sometimes I think what happens is, people go to college or go somewhere and get a different life experience.
Right.
Which is a different sort of version of education. It may not be even anything that's happened in a classroom. You get a different life experience, and it makes you look at the communities and social circles and family structures that you were in with different eyes.
Right.
Maybe you appreciate parts of them more. Maybe some of the parts of them you go, oh,
yeah.
What was I thinking about and participating in that I only saw through one lens? And you start to see them through different lenses, and you start to, again, appreciate some things more and really not appreciate other things more. And that's just a part of having more life experiences, traveling some places, meeting people with different religions from you,
right.
different political views from you. Some you think are jackasses, some of which you're like, you are so different from me, but you are super interesting. And I've never thought about it that way before.
Right. Well, that's the point is you're going to a university, lots of different types of people, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different ideas and arguments and opinions. You're in classes, you're reading books you'd never ever read if you didn't go to college. Right.
Right.
And
wouldn't have a reason to know they even existed.
Right. And now what you thought about the world, which is a lot of it was from whatever community you were from or what your parents thought. Now you're getting all these different perspectives. You're starting to form your own ideas. And that's what he's really scared of here is.
Because it's no longer just the perspective of the parents and family unit.
Right.
It's about the family unit perspective and the community I grew up in perspective and all these different kinds of people I've met and
right.
things I've read in different books, all of that.
Yeah, but that's the thing is now I'm getting a lot of different ideas. I'm no longer in the bubble. Right? I've had to step out of the bubble to get an education, which is the point of getting an education, is it forces you to step out of that bubble. Otherwise, we'd all still believe in witchcraft and shit. Right? Because that's how that's persisted, is you lived in a small town and, your parents believed that vampires and witches were real and you grew up with that. And so you thought it was real. And then you finally...
I mean, witches totally are real, but that vampire stuff, that's me.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, that's the thing is like, people believed that for centuries and centuries. And then what happened? They learned how to read and write. And they went to schools and they went to cities and they met other people. And they're telling them about, oh, yeah, witches and vampires. And these people are like, no. That's ridiculous. The vampire thing? Yeah, sure. It's tuberculosis, buddy. It's not vampirism. Oh, man. But anyway, I just thought that was funny because it's like, dude, it's just the whole... Your friend's an asshole. And his daughter realized it. I don't know what else you could say. I mean... He doesn't really have an argument. It's just that's what it was. All right. Well, let's move on to this next clip. We'll do this as this will be our last clip. So I haven't watched this yet. I know Lacey hasn't seen this yet. This is Dave Ramsey, our big fan of our show. You know, Dave. Dave Ramsey is going to explain why Roth investments, like Roth IRAs and 401ks, are better than traditional. Now, I haven't seen this, but I have a PowerPoint that I showed people, especially students, to explain how these accounts work in a really simple way. And I'll bet you Dave makes the rookie mistake that everybody makes.
I do want to chime in and say I like Roth accounts, but I also don't really know where he's going with this.
We'll see where he goes with this, but I'm going to show you the side-by-side anyway, because I think that he's going to fuck this up.
Jane's in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Hi, Jane. Welcome to the Ramsey Show.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure. What's up?
Well, I've been listening to you for a little while now, and you seem to favor a Roth IRA over a traditional IRA quite frequently. I know the differences. I'm wondering why you tend to favor the Roth, and I could tell you why my financial advisor originally put all my money into a traditional, if you want to hear that.
Well, it's possible that your financial advisor fell in the same hole that other financial advisors fell in and couldn't get out. And that hole was, in order for the traditional to work out ahead of the Roth mathematically, you have to be in a lower tax bracket dramatically at retirement than you are now. A dramatically lower tax bracket, which, by the way, means you haven't got any money. Because if you've got $5 million, your required minimum distributions at 70 and a half are going to put you in the same tax bracket you're in now. So you're not.
Okay. Okay. So here he did. He fucked it up. This is a camper move. This is rookie mistake 101. All right. Let me do this. Here we go. Traditional versus a Roth. Rookie mistake. So, oh, shoots. Let me do this. Sorry. I don't want that view. I want that view. There we go. So, traditional. So, here's how this is set up. So, it's named after, what was his name? Joseph Roth. It was him and a guy named, I forget, Hackmead or something from Oregon. They developed this thing. So the idea of a Roth is you're supposed to still end up with the same amount of money whether you do a Roth or a traditional. But it was to try and get more people to invest in their retirement. So let's say you're in the 20% tax bracket your whole life, right? We're not changing your tax bracket at all. So in retirement and now, today, you're in the same tax bracket you're going to be in, which is his scenario, Dave's scenario. Right? You didn't change your tax bracket. Okay, here's where Dave fucks this up. So if I'm in a traditional and I have $10,000 to invest, we'll just make this easy. I don't pay tax on that money now. It's deferred tax, right? But I have my $10,000 to invest, and let's say I get 8% for 9 years, so it doubles the money, right? So I have $20,000 at the end to take out. So I take that out. It's taxed when it's withdrawn. So I'd end up paying $4,000 in taxes on that $20,000, but I'd still have $16,000 to spend. Right? Now with a Roth, I have the same $10,000 I put in a Roth. I'm taxed now, and I only pay $2,000 in taxes. So I paid less taxes, right? Which is where Dave's like, boom, hey, less taxes. We already won. But he doesn't complete the equation. Because now I only have $8,000 to invest because I paid the taxes today. So I double my $8,000 and it becomes $16,000, and I don't pay tax when I withdraw it. So I still only have $16,000 left to spend. So that's the thing about it. From that perspective, you still end up with the same amount of money if your tax bracket doesn't change, which is the scenario he just gave. So he's saying, well, your advisor doesn't understand this because it only works if your tax bracket changes, which is partly true, but it's wrong. Right?
he needs to kind of play out. He also needs to play out more scenarios, like if it changes in this direction versus it changes in that direction. There's a directional change component that he's not looking at.
Right. So here, let's look at the directional change component. Oh yeah, I'm not slacking off over here. So let's say you go from a higher tax bracket now, which a lot of people are. So a lot of people, while you're earning money, especially when you get to like your 30s, 40s, and 50s, that's when your peak earnings are. Right? So I'm in a 20% tax bracket now, but then when I retire, I don't need as much money. I think the average is like 80% of what your income was, is what most people live on in retirement, right? To maintain their lifestyle, because you don't have the same expenses because you're not working. You don't have to drive to work and all that stuff. So I go for my 20% now while I'm saving the money, but I'm probably going to be in like a 10% tax bracket when I retire, or a lower tax bracket. But I just did 20 to 10 to make it easy. So I have $10,000 now in my traditional. I don't pay tax. I invest the $10,000, doubles after 9 years. I have $20,000. I tax it now. It's taxed when I withdraw it. So I'm taxed $2,000 because I'm in the lower tax bracket now, 10%. So I have $18,000 to spend. With a Roth, on the other hand, I have my $10,000. It's taxed right now. So I invest my $8,000. It doubles after that. I get $16,000. I don't have to pay tax on that, but I only have $16,000 to spend. Right? So that's the advantage of a traditional. And this is why most advisors, if you're probably you're earning in a higher tax bracket, right? If you're making over $70,000, $80,000 a year, traditional's the safer bet. Bless you. Bless you. But the traditional is the safer bet because in all likelihood, your taxes are going to be lower when you're in retirement. Because a lot of people aren't working. You're just taking income from your retirement funds and your Social Security, right? So you're not making as much money, bless you, right? Plus you're not having to pay for kids and all that shit usually in retirement, right? So you don't have to earn as much money. You're just taking care of yourself. So that's why most advisors will do that, because in all likelihood, you'll be in the lower tax bracket. So you'll have more money in the end. Yeah, you're getting attacked. But here's why a Roth is there's a couple things that Roths are really cool about, but this is essentially why the Roth was developed. Is if you're lower income to begin with, let's say you're in your 20s or your 30s and you're just, you're starting your career out and you don't make a lot of money. So you're in the lower 10% tax bracket today, but you're going to go up to a 20% tax bracket probably by the time you retire, or you're going to go to a higher tax bracket when you retire because you'll have more money by then. Then if I put my $10,000 in today, not taxed on a traditional, I have $10,000 to invest, doubles after my 9 years, I have $20,000 to withdraw. A tax once withdrawn, I pay the $4,000 in taxes, the 20%, right? So I have $16,000 to spend. But if I put it in a Roth and I'm only at the 10% now, if I put the 10,000 in Roth, I only pay $1,000 in taxes on the 10%. So I have $9,000 to invest. So doubles after that, I get $18,000. Now I have $18,000 to spend. So I beat the traditional because I went from a lower tax bracket to a higher tax bracket. And that's what he's just missed is the strategy depends on what your taxes are probably going to look like now versus the future.
Right, exactly. As I was suggesting at the beginning, what he's missing is the directional movement, associated with your tax bracket.
Yeah.
And yes, it is possible that you could kind of start and land in the same spots. Maybe there's some fluctuation in between, but like start and land roughly in the same spot. But you could go from higher to lower or lower to higher, and the results are different. Yeah. And so one of the tricky parts is sort of anticipating that.
Yes.
But that's where you look at this with your financial planner, and you look at this with the person who does your taxes, and sort of try to, you can't know it for sure, but you try to look at some of the factors involved so you can try to estimate which direction the movement's going to go, try to nail some of those things down. But he doesn't look at any of that, really.
No. Well, that's the thing. It's because he's not a financial advisor. Because if somebody said to me, hey, my financial advisor said this, what do you think? I'd be like, well, I'm sure your financial advisor knows a lot more information about you than I do. So
Right.
I'm sure they have a reason why they're doing it. I don't know what it is necessarily at this point. But that's probably the situation, is she's probably going to be in a lower tax bracket after she retires. In all likelihood, she's probably peaked out where she's at now. And she's paying the highest taxes she'll ever pay. So when she's in the lower tax bracket, that's when she should pay the taxes on it. That's what he's missing. But what he's done is what every rookie does on the Roth thing is they go, oh, but I paid less taxes because I paid it now. So I won. Because you either pay the same amount in tax or less, but it's whether you pay it now or later. What really matters, though, isn't what you're paying in tax. It's what do you have at the end. Right? I mean, Lacey, if you had to pay a higher tax, but you ended up with $1 million, would you take that deal? Or would you take the deal where you pay a lower tax and you only end up with $500,000?
I'd want to know what my tax was going to be.
No. You pay the tax, but you have $1 million left.
Yeah.
Or you pay a lower tax rate and you only have $500,000 left. Which would you take?
I mean, I want my $1 million.
Right. That's what he's fucked up. He's just thinking about lower tax. He's thinking you should take the $500,000 because it's lower taxes. It's like, no. You should take the $1 million and just pay the higher taxes.
Sure.
That's what fuck up. Let's watch some more of this. But see, I called it. I didn't even watch this video, and I knew he was going to make that fucking mistake because everybody makes that same mistake.
Not going to be in a lower tax bracket. And so the Roth absolutely mathematically kicks the traditional's butt.
It doesn't, though. And
here's why. If you take $200 a month from age 25 to age 65, 40 years, and you invest that in a decent growth stock mutual fund, you're going to have $2.5 million in there. However, only $96,000 of the $2.5 million is actual principal that you put in. So if you did a traditional in that, you would have gotten a tax break on $96,000. You would have not paid taxes yet on $96,000, but you'll pay taxes on the entire $2.5 million as you pull it out. If instead you did this with a Roth, you would pay taxes on the $96,000 and zero taxes on the rest of the $2.5 million.
But see, that's where he fucked it up. Because he's saying, oh, Lace? You there? Sorry. Lost you there for a second. Mm-hmm. But that's where he fucked it up, because he's saying, okay, apples to oranges. You're putting $200 in, right, a month, in a Roth or a traditional. Well, in a traditional, you have to pay tax on that first, so you're not putting $200 in. That's what he did wrong. He compared apples to oranges, not apples to apples. And he's right. Yeah, you're paying more tax on the traditional, right? But if you never change tax brackets like he's suggesting, you're still going to end up with the same amount of money as you did with the Roth. But in all likelihood, you'll be in a lower tax bracket. And the thing about it is, the other thing he's missing is, I mean, he's talking about you're still going to pay, you don't have to pay capital gains on a Roth, and you're not paying capital gains on the other one either. But I don't know why he's doing the cost basis that way. But that's the difference. Is he's kind of screwed this up. For income purposes, yes, you pay more tax on a traditional because there's more money at the end than if you did with a Roth. But the real strategy is, what tax bracket are you going to go up in tax bracket or down? If I think in retirement, I own a bunch of businesses and I'm going to be making a lot of income, just passive income, then no, a Roth is what I want. and I want to convert what I have into a Roth so I don't have to pay tax on any of that money. That's why Roth conversions were popular, but only with really wealthy people who realized that later on they're going to have so much more money, they didn't want to pay tax on it.
So they kind of wanted to sort of prepay some taxes, so to speak.
Pay it today while I'm in the lower tax bracket, so that
front load it.
Yep. So that way, when I'm in the higher tax bracket later, I don't have to pay tax on that money.
Right.
Roth conversions are really popular if you have a lot of money and you think you're going to be making even more in retirement. But if you're going to be making less in retirement, which the vast majority of the working class does, right? Because you're just living off your savings, you're living off less, then yeah, traditional is the way you want to go. Unless you're just starting out your career and you're just starting to save money, then yeah, start with a Roth, because then when you get to a higher tax bracket and you're making more money, you switch to a traditional. So I have a lot of clients that have both. But it really depends on when they put the money in and what tax bracket they were in. So yeah, he's fucked it all up. So Jane in Kalamazoo, I would just listen to your financial advisor. That's my advice. For whatever advice I'm going to give. So any other thoughts or anything on that? No.
Nope.
All right. Well, that's pretty much the show. Yeah. Where can everybody catch you, Lacey?
As always, you can catch me at mysensewithsense.com. You can find articles, information about courses, workshops, and if you have questions about any of those items, you can email us or take the challenge. Find us a clip you want us to talk about and review. The last one was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Or invite yourself onto the show and come and talk to us. Duncan, how might they do that?
You can do that by going to our email at gossipfinancead@outlook.com. It's down below. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good work today, Lace, and we'll catch you guys next time.